Less than 4 weeks after Election Day, campaigns are once again in motion, this time over the federal budget. Unless the President and Congress reach an agreement before the end of the year, budget cuts and tax increases will take effect automatically, what's known as going over the fiscal cliff. Many believe that would be a serious blow for the economy, for taxpayers, and for services for people in need. But there's also concern about the effect of a compromise and even the pace of definite reduction. As part of a national campaign for sending a message to Congress, progressive activists around the country will take part in what they call a day of action. One of the events will take place tomorrow morning at City Hall Plaza. Joining us is one of the participants, the Executive Director of ProgressMass, Michael Fogelberg. Thank you very much for being with us, Michael.
Very glad to be here. Thank you.
People keep hearing about this now in terms of almost the horse race terms of, who's going to win and who's going to lose. But talk about the people who live in this city. What difference does this make for them?
Well, quite a bit. Depending upon the resolution of the problem, the outcome of the political wrangling, Boston seniors, people on Medicare and Medicaid, could see their benefits reduced, and that would be one of the most disastrous results. Cuts could be made across the board in social programs as well as defense and other areas, or a solution can be achieved that gains a majority and forestalls, prevents the automatic cuts that are called sequestration. We're hoping that we can help shape that compromise, or at least drive a victory that preserves benefits for the people who are helped by the social safety net, and as well as that, bring in new revenue to begin drawing down the deficit, which is a problem, but we're concerned that the deficit is being used to drive cuts that are unnecessary.
I have seen some very scary numbers to the effect that we're spending a lot more, and we're going to be doing that even further into the future in a deeper way than we have. So it looks as if we've got to do something pretty dramatic about that.
Well, if you think about public spending, much of it comes back to the government. The money invested by the government, whether in job creation or in different kinds of industries, job growth, education, leads to greater growth and broader prosperity or broader economic well-being. When that happens, the government collects more taxes. So it is a balancing act, and cuts are necessary, but we have to consider the impacts of 2 wars that were never paid for. We have to consider the impacts of a healthcare system and a drug industry that's costing Americans well more than most other advanced industrial countries around the world. And then also look at the economic crisis. What has the economic crisis done to revenues at the state and local level? And how will further federal cuts impact state and local government? There's a trickle-down effect of destruction and damage that we need to prevent.
Well, as much as we hear that it's important to make some kind of cuts or show that you're on your way to making cuts, but I guess if you make a lot of cuts up front, I guess that means, well, some people are going to be out of work.
Well, yes, and also aggressive budget cutting at this point in our economic recovery could well stall the recovery and throw us back into recession. If you look at what's happening in Europe, Greece, Spain, that's in the news quite a bit.
But even the UK, they're into austerity too.
Yeah,
that's
UK,
no picnic either.
Right. So, I mean, it's a balance, and where is the proper balance? That's a difficult call to make, but cuts that are too aggressive are likely to have very negative effects on our economic recovery.
It sounds as if most of the people representing Massachusetts in Congress are on the same page with your organization, but you are concerned about the one Republican representative, Senator Scott Brown. He's not going to be a senator much longer, but I guess you think he's a real key figure here.
Well, every vote every vote to eliminate the tax cuts, the tax breaks for the top 2% of American income earners, every vote we can get on that is critically important. And we're having an event tomorrow in Boston City Hall Plaza to call on Scott Brown to vote the way Massachusetts wants him to vote. Democrats, Republicans, independents across the board think that the tax cuts for the top 2% should be eliminated, that the wealthiest Americans have made money hand over fist, and it's time that they start contributing back to the government in a more reasonable and responsible way. And we're hoping that Senator Scott Brown will not be a lame duck senator in the lame duck session, but will in fact be a leader and vote in favor of restoring responsible and reasonable tax rates on the wealthiest 2% of Americans.
Aside from the message here, talk about this national campaign and why you think this campaign is so important to set in motion.
Well, the campaign is really the kickoff of an effort to keep the voters engaged in national priorities. We had an amazing result here in our state. We set a record for voter turnout in a presidential election. Almost 3.2 million voters turned out. Just an astounding level of political participation. Well, they came out for a reason, and they came out resoundingly in favor of protecting the social safety net, and those programs are on the chopping block. And so our effort is focused on keeping them involved, that it isn't a matter of coming out every 4 or 2 years. It's here and now. It's in the next 2 to 6 months that this problem will be addressed. And we need the Americans who care about this to stay engaged, and that's what we're focused on.
Well, one of the things you have in mind is you want people to show up at City Hall Plaza tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock.
Correct.
But what about beyond that? I mean, what does doing this kind of work mean, being engaged and having an effect? What does that take exactly?
Well, it's our hope that as the voters become engaged citizens, that they are addressing their leaders regularly, that they're, letters to the editor, to the community meetings, the usual typical things, rallying, some protest when necessary,
Oh, the Tea Party did it, right?
The Tea Party, did set quite an example and had quite a dramatic impact. I would not go the direction the Tea Party advocated. Different agenda, and
that's right.
I like to think we're a bit more reasonable and responsible than some of the Tea Party leaders. But there is a need to just become more active and to get our citizenry engaged in democracy. There's a lot of big things happening in the world, and a lot of big institutions that need to be held accountable that have gotten away with far too much.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Michael Fogelberg from ProgressMass.